All right, so this is the first video for Unit 3, and this will take us right up to the end of the semester going into Christmas break. So the first thing you need to know is the major differences between Unit 2 and Unit 3. Okay, so Unit 2 is all about equations, right? Using this kind of equal sign. And the whole idea behind an equal sign is that there's one exact answer, right? We end up with something like x equals 2. That means you have a single answer, right? The answer is 2. It's exactly 2. Right? If you were asked to put your answer on like a number line, you could do that pretty easily. So you go -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. Because the answer is 2 and nothing else, we just put a dot at 2. It's pretty easy, right? Now, the major difference going into Unit 2 is now we're going to use what's called an inequality symbol. And I'm sure you've seen these before. There's 4 of them, right? So there is the less than symbol, there's the greater than symbol, the less than or equal to, and the greater than or equal to. And the idea is you should know what each of those mean and kind of be able to translate those into like a sentence, right? So just real briefly going through each one. Obviously, we know the basics, right? So the first one we know is referred to as less than, okay? But sometimes they might rephrase it and use words like fewer than. So be aware of that. It means the same exact thing, just worded differently. Same thing with the next one. We know this one is greater than, okay? Or they could just say it's more than. The reason why I'm going through these is it's just as important to know what it means as well as how to read it correctly. Okay, so that's a very key thing for this unit. Okay, the next two, this one is less than or equal to. Okay, so less than or equal to. Okay, the major difference between the less than or equal to and the less than symbol is if you're saying like a number is less than 2, that can mean it means any number coming close to 2 like before it, like 1, 0, -1, but not 2 itself. It has to be less than 2. Okay, so any number less than 2 would work. If you go less than or equal to 2, then that means you can use any number that's less than 2 as well as 2 itself. That's why it kind of has like the half of that equal sign in there. Okay. Another way they could phrase it is they could say like at most. So it's a little bit tricky. Or they could say like no more than. Okay, so there's different ways they could say it. And the last one, same thing. It is greater than or equal to. Okay, and or they could say at most. Sorry, at least, not at most. At least, and they could also say no less than. Okay, so this is something you might want to make a little note of, like with a highlighter or something, because we are going to get into at some point having to translate word problems into like inequalities. And these keywords might be very important. So I would make a little bit note here. It'll help you when kind of translating these things. The other thing you have to know about these is when you are graphing them, like at the top, when we were using equal sign, we used a closed dot. To show a range, it depends on the actual symbol itself. So for example, going back to the first one, the less than symbol, when we're graphing it, we use what's referred to as an open dot. And I'll show you what that means. Okay, so we would just do an open circle like that on the graph. And we'll see some examples in a second. Same thing with greater than, it's also open. Okay, put a circle there. And then we get to the less than or equal to symbol. Because it's equal to, we use a closed dot, very similar to the equal sign. So for the last two, we would use closed dots. which is just a colored in circle. Okay, so that's going to be something you're going to have to do when you solve these equations. A lot of the time, they're going to ask you to also graph your answer, which is not too difficult. It's just essentially putting a dot on your value and then telling which direction you're going in, less than, greater than, and so forth. Okay, and then the last thing you need to know as far as like graphing an answer is each one of these require a dot, just like with the equal sign, but they also require a direction arrow. So put a little side note here. All of them require a direction. Okay? You have to tell the person who's reading your answer what your actual answer is and the direction it's going in. So if it's less than, we're going to the left. If it's greater than, we're going to the right. Okay? All right, let's take a look at a couple of examples so you can see kind of what I'm talking about. Okay? So we're not actually solving anything yet. We're just kind of going over the basics. So in the first one, let's say you're solving an equation and you get an answer like this. X is less than 3. And the question is make sure to answer it as well as provide a graph. So draw a quick number line. The numbers that appear on your number line are not too important as long as you label them, right? So you can put any numbers you want, just wherever you start. Like you can start with 0 here, then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So our answer is 3. So we know we're going to put a dot at 3. But we have to make sure and check. Is it an open circle or a closed circle? Well, our symbol is less than. And there's no equal to sign. So we know it's going to be an open circle. So at 3, we put an open circle. And then it needs a direction. It says x is less than 3. Well, the direction that's less than 3 is to the left. So here's how you would show that. Just a simple directional arrow. And then you're done. Okay. So as we get into solving these, and it says require a graph at the end, that's all you got to do is open or close dot and then a direction. Okay. Now they could get a little bit tricky with you and end up with something like this: 5 less than or equal to x. Now, nothing is wrong with this answer, but when you're trying to graph, it may get a little bit confusing because technically you should read it from where the x is. So it might be easier to flip it around, okay? Now, if you flip it around, you have to flip the entire thing around. So it would end up being this. So you have to flip the symbol around as well. So it actually says x is greater than or equal to 5, okay? So it might be in your best interest to flip your answer around so that the x is always on the left-hand side. Just don't forget to flip the symbol around as well. And then we can draw our number line. And again, we can start our number line with anything we want, right? So we'll put some dashes in here. And let's say we start off with 4. Then we go 5, 6, and 7. Okay. Same thing goes with negative numbers. You can include those on there as well. So this one does have the equal to sign. So we are going to put a closed dot. And then now that we flipped it around, we can clearly see it's going to the right. Okay, as long as the x is on the left-hand side, the arrow kind of points in the direction you have to go. But that's why we had to flip it around, because it was backwards. So we know this one is going to the right. Okay, and that's all it really is. Okay, so I'm gonna put 2 more on the screen. I want you guys to try them, and then you can check your answer to see if you did it correctly. Okay. All right. So first one, I want you to try. Number 1, I want you to graph x is greater than -2. And number 2, I want you to graph x is less than or equal to 4. Okay, so we can draw a number line. And again, technically you can assign any values to these dashes. Okay. All right, so go ahead and pause the video at this point, try it out, and then when you're ready, press play to check your answer. All right, so Um, you do have to have -2 on your number line, so maybe we start somewhere like -4, -3, -2, -1, and 0. And then this one is a greater than symbol, so it is going an open circle, and it's greater than and it's pointing to the right, which is okay as long as the x is on the left-hand side. So we know it's going this direction. And then question 2, assign values as well. We need to have 4 on there, so maybe we go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, this one has an equal to bar, so it's a closed dot. And again, as long as the x is on the left-hand side, this will point in the direction you have to go. So we do know it's going to the left. And that's all it is. Okay. The questions will get more challenging, but again, this is just the beginning of a unit. Okay, so we want to make sure you guys know how to graph before moving on.